everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on a new set of chapters of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. And I have been on vacation the last week. I came back, and it's my first day back from vacation, and I was like, I can't wait. Because when we last left off, we had some startling developments between Shen QingQiu as well as Luo Binghe. Some interesting notes about flowers, about poison, about cooking. It was a nice little novel-only set of information that the Donghua just conveniently did not give us that we started for this volume. So I'm really excited. We actually have 4 chapters that we're doing today, which is a lot. But the way that it worked out, I wanted to do chapters 16 through 19, which in this book is pages 152 to 184. So it's about 30 pages worth, which is probably one of the most depth-filled segments, the deepest set of pages we've had so far. Maybe it'll go by really quick. Maybe nothing will happen. But we are about to get into the dream sequence, I'm sure, with, we're about to get into the dream sequence with Luo Binghe and Shen, and I've been really, really excited about this. So, yay. But we got some comments I want to talk about before we dive into that and go from there. So I've got some comments that I had from last week. Heaven Official's Blessing and Marshmeo pointed this out. And I was like, yes, absolutely. Marshmeo pointed out that in Heaven Official's Blessing and as well as Modao Zushi, it was very easy to abbreviate names. It was very easy to use acronyms. And Scum Villain Self-Saving System is truly a test of tongue twisters and getting that right. And I was like, oh my God, yes. Because I remember back like with Modao Zushi, I couldn't say Yao's full name. So I just said Yao. And I was like, that's what we're going to have to do. And everybody was like, cool. And then with like Wei Wuxian or La Wangji, I feel like the names were a little bit better. But there were even some that I was like, I would try to say all of them. They're like, you could just say this. And I was like, cool. And so I feel like with Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, it's a lot easier to say the names. They roll off the tongue a lot better, especially for me and coming from as a native English speaker. Whereas Scum Villain Self-Saving System, and you can't blame MXTX. We talked about this way back in the Donghua and around week 1. With MXTX, this is their first novel. So being commercial internationally was not their goal. I'm sure they were writing a novel for Chinese readers. And so they're like, yeah, whatever. And then once it became internationally successful, then as they're writing their next 2 stories, they're like, I know if I was an author, I would think of that too. If I was an author who was thinking of a global audience reading, I'd be like, okay, well, I want to still be true to my heritage and my culture, but also I want to be accessible. Because, you know, if you're a writer, it's all well and good to say you're writing for writing's sake. And I do think MXTX does that. But at the end of the day, they are trying to make money to survive as a writer. So you do have to make concessions and think of, okay, how can I make this accessible to a broader audience? And it's awesome that it's accessible to a broader audience because you want people to be able to read your story and connect to your themes and get to learn about the culture that you're writing about. So yeah, I feel like I completely understand why they made it a little bit easier moving forward, but this almost feels like a rite of passage. So I'm glad, Marshmeo, that you point that out. So SQQ LBH 314 talked about the meaning behind last week's segment of the ripping bleep. I was like, is it ripping like, are we talking about vaginas? Apparently we are. Apparently we're talking about vaginas. It was basically ripping. It's a vulgar slur involving a female's genitalia. And I'm like, okay, we could say the P word or we could just say vaginas or whatnot, but that's what it's referring to. It's used to basically being, it's used in intense arguments a lot of times as well, and conflicts typically on the internet, which I thought was interesting because Shen, you know, being a modern day otaku, would probably have heard that phrase thrown around a lot because they've been on the internet a lot. So that kind of connects to the story. So I thought that was interesting. And then they pointed out this thing that was different from the novel to the Donghua, and that makes so much more sense now. In the Donghua, when Shen QingQiu gets out of the cave, it's been 3 years, and Luo Binghe is 17, which I thought going into this was the same in the novel, but no. In the novel, it's only been a couple months, so Luo Binghe is still like 14 to 15, kind of like Xia Hualing in the novel versus the Donghua. And I wondered if the Donghua aged up Luo Binghe so that when they did the more flirtatious moments, it was more appropriate than doing it to a 14-year-old. So I don't know if that was the reason why they did it. I feel like for censorship, that's the reason why they did it. But like we said, we haven't really seen a whole lot of flirting between the two of them to point out that it would be, any other way. I want to bring up a comment from a specific YouTuber because I thought, or no, it was from a patron. Apologies. It was from a patron. And I want to bring this up because I thought this comment, it suddenly spoke to me. And I was like, oh my God. So this is actually from a patron. Let me find the comment real quick and show you all. But we were talking about I've been talking the last several weeks about Shen and how oblivious he is to all of the advances around Luo Binghe. And I kind of inadvertently sort of hit it on the head last week, and I didn't realize what I was saying until I read Amalia Jungklaus's comment, and I was like, oh my God, yes. So I'm going to read you verbatim what they said because I really can't paraphrase it any better. So they said, I also had a headcanon that Shen QingQiu could also be some flavor of ace. And for a lot of those same reasons, how his thoughts of getting a girlfriend are sort of distant, how he sees that as a milestone in life rather than a thing that he really wants. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt such a connection to this comment because I'm on the ace spectrum. I like flavor of ace. I like that. We're like an ice cream cone. Because I felt that too. Like I've not been in a relationship in years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And that's not really been because I haven't found anybody interested. There's been people ask me out, but I'm like, I just don't really want it. And I view it kind of like you view marriage and stuff as a milestone, like, oh, well, you're supposed to get married, rather than something that I necessarily want. Right. And so then they continue and say how the first thing he notices in SHL is the lack of proper footwear, and how he liked Lo Mingyan so much because she doesn't have any detailed intimate scenes written about her. And I talked a little bit about that last week, but I didn't draw the connection that it could be because Shen QingQiu could be ace. And I was like, oh. And then they said those could also be explained by him being gay and oblivious too, of course. Yeah, so you could take it that direction if you wanted to. Not saying that he is for sure, because MXTX doesn't say that for sure. But something about the way that Shen QingQiu seems to view these things is different compared to how the other protagonists think about it. Like how you pointed out that Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji kind of both had thoughts of being together, even before they knew exactly what those were. Some of the things that Shen QingQiu thinks and says reminds me of how I thought I was straight before I realized I was ace. So I really like that, Amelia. I'm glad to have another ace card in the patronage. So thank you so much for saying that. That's really awesome. But yeah, after saying that, I kind of feel the same way. Like I love romance and fiction. I love romance and fiction. I'm all about BL and fiction. If it's done appropriately, give me a heterosexual couple, sure. But I love the relationships and romance in fiction. But then when it comes to reality, I'm kind of like, I don't really need to be in anything like that. I'm good. And a lot of the things that Shen has been doing so far, and the way that Shen is just here for the food, right? Not here for the actual food. And I was like, oh, it all suddenly made sense. And I was like, huh. I get that now. So, of course, you could say that Shen's just being oblivious. That he's just a peacock. Maybe he's demisexual. Maybe he's ace right now, but then him and Luo Binghe will grow to love each other and he'll be like demisexual to him later on. That could possibly be it. But I thought that was such a really eloquent way of putting it. And the way that you phrased that, Amelia, just kind of opened my eyes to that possibility. So now I have that thinking looking forward. And I thought that was really, really cool. So thank you. But then, yeah, so finally, the Discord, right before I went on vacation, they were like, here's some feral fandom bits to get you through. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, I hadn't thought about Horse Binghe, but now I can't unsee it. And now you can't unsee it either. What is this madness? I feel like, have any of y'all ever watched Ruby? In Ruby, there was like B-Haw or Yeehaw, and it was like Belladonna, and it was Blake and, oh my God, and Yang in a relationship, and they had like a horse Yang, and I was just like, what is happening? This is reminding me of that. But then it gets weirder. Then there was some crazy like cursed sexy horse dating game, and they like incorporated Shen QingQiu's face onto this, like saying, do you want a carrot? And I was like, why? With Rule 34 artwork, I was like, I wasn't ready. This fandom is feral. This fandom is feral. I don't know what to do with it. But thank you for this dose of madness. We surely needed it. So, I'm really excited. We have 4 chapters to get through today, so we're not going to waste any more time. We kind of just ended randomly at the dream world, at the dream realm starting, so I am very curious to know what kind of explanations we will get moving forward that might be different than the Donghua. So, and I've got to brush up because I've not been rewatching the Donghua on purpose so that certain moments kind of maybe hit me and surprise me more, especially knowing it can be different than the Donghua, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I hope y'all are excited. We are going to start chapters 16 through 19 of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. And we're going to do this here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 16. Mine, Luo Binghe startled and backed up a step, looking at the endless, desolate land and sky. My dream realm actually looks like this. The dream realm, one's view of the world, reflected one's heart. Luo Binghe was so young, yet his mindscape wasn't filled with the red flowers and the greens of willows, but this bleak scenery. One couldn't help feeling sorrow. Oh, see, I thought it was all just kind of like, I didn't realize it had that symbolic significance. Shen QingQiu pretended to ponder for a while. This is not an ordinary dream realm. I'm afraid that while you were unaware, someone has tampered with it. The waves of spiritual energy within this dream are strong and unstable, though this master was inadvertently pulled in by you. This disciple is useless and involves Shizun once again. Luo Binghe's face was ashamed, but he considered this carefully. Exactly who would tamper with my dream realm? Shen QingQiu was ready with an answer, fully enjoying the experience of it, divulging spoilers. Shen QingQiu, we cannot be diverging spoilers. Don't enjoy that. No need to think too hard. The borders of this dream realm churn with demonic chi, and any entity who would use such crude techniques undoubtedly must be a demon. Luo Binghe was unsurprised, and those words only deepened his hatred toward that race. The ways of demons are truly poisonous. Shen QingQiu wondered what sort of expression Luo Binghe would make in the future, thinking back on these words, once he learned of his own demonic heritage. Oh, we're going to talk about this in the discussion, don't worry. Not necessarily poisonous, Shen QingQiu said with a smile. Perhaps their intentions are the exact opposite. Someone not in the know couldn't hope to comprehend words spoken from his omniscient perspective. Oh, Shen QingQiu's trying to make him not feel so bad about his heritage. Oh. Luo Binghe didn't understand. What did his master mean? But Shen QingQiu's smile seemed profound, and the tail of his sentence was inflected lightly upward in a somewhat easing tone, or teasing tone. It was a sort of hint that made people's imaginations run wild. Luo Binghe stopped there, not daring to think about it any further. In truth, Shen QingQiu didn't intend to tease. He thought himself very straightforward. The one who tampered with Luo Binghe's dream was Sha Hualing. Oh! I thought it was Nightmare. Though she did have some harmful intentions, her underlying motive was obvious. Naturally, she was driven by a young girl's secret yearning for love. Oh my God, Shen QingQiu, are you sure about that? Are you sure? Otherwise, she would have directed her aggressions towards others, not specifically Luo Binghe. Demons were compelled to viciously bully the person they liked. Only if the object of their affections failed to die would the demon accept them. If their target died, that meant they were useless, not worth nurturing any lingering affections for. But didn't Luo Binghe originally go there with another girl? Why would she want to insinuate that? Why would you want another girl involved if you were trying to win his affections? This dream realm is rather complicated, said Shen QingQiu. An ordinary nightmare technique couldn't trap me. I can dispel those with a mere thought. But this dream realm was truly meticulously constructed. I'm afraid that until the core of the illusion is destroyed, no one will be able to leave. Even Shizun would be trapped in this dream realm forever? Luo Binghe answered, anxious. Shen QingQiu glanced at him. You will be too. Luo Binghe's mind jolted, his face going from red to white. Oh, it's all this disciple's fault. This situation is what it is. There's no use decrying it, said Shen QingQiu. We should devise a solution as soon as possible, dispel the barrier, and take our leave. Luo Binghe silently nodded and followed behind Shen QingQiu as they headed towards the dream's realm's border. Shen QingQiu's face was smooth and unchanging, but his mind was a stormy sea. He was having an intense back and forth with the system. System alert. You are now entering an important subplot scenario. The dream demon, Meng Mo's barrier. During this subplot, please make sure to assist Luo Binghe in defeating Meng Mo's illusion. Otherwise, 1,000 satisfaction points will be deducted. There it was again! Always deducting satisfaction points, and every time it was a heart attack-inducing number. After assiduously working for so long, Shen QingQiu had only managed to scrounge a couple of satisfaction points here and there, while the system could remove 1,000 points in a single deduction. Was this really fair? As a person? No! As a system, you shouldn't be so inflexible! That wasn't the main point, though. The main point was that this was the wrong script. Let us summarize this scenario's original setup. Luo Binghe was pushed into Meng Mo's sphere of influence, but before danger struck, he instinctually sought protection and pulled the person he trusted most into the barrier with him. Shen QingQiu urgently called to the system, "Master, good master, esteemed master, this has been a bug, right? In this section, Luo Binghe should be cozying up with the maiden, and the maiden is responsible for unraveling his complexes and using love to help him defeat his inner demons. How come I've been thrust into this role? Where is the promised deep and emotional heart-to-heart where she's accepted into his harem? Where is the promised little Shime who refuses to leave him either in life or in death?" Our self-inspection failed to find a bug. The system is running normally. No bug. That meant that in this scenario, Shen QingQiu either had to carry out that role or die. This was the butterfly effect. Originally, the one who was pulled into Luo Binghe's nightmare was Ning Yingying. As Luo Binghe's closest, most trusted confidant on Qijing Peak in the early story, this gate-crashing, intimacy-building task was clearly her job. But what was happening now? How had the hat of closest, most trusted confidant nonsensically landed on Shen QingQiu's head? Oh my God, come on now. I would like to express that I am overwhelmed by this honor, but I don't at all want to accept this special distinction. Shizun, what's wrong? Luo Binghe asked in concern, seeing his unreadable expression. Shen QingQiu promptly pulled himself together. "Nothing's wrong," he said calmly. This master was thinking that demons who manipulate dream realms often target the weaknesses of the human heart. You must be vigilant and on your guard. Luo Binghe nodded, his expression firm. This disciple definitely won't allow Shifu to be dragged in again. This was miserable. Not only had Shen QingQiu been thrust into a dangerous situation, on top of that, he had to assume the task of playing out the maiden's role. Shen QingQiu absolutely didn't want to charge through a mountain of knives or see a fire with the male lead to confront the terrifying Master Meng Mo while also blocking knives for him and even providing free psychological therapy. That said, complaining was useless. In the past, when he'd been faced with this kind of situation, his habit had been to cuss out Airplane shooting towards the sky. But honestly, Great Master Airplane was also innocent. He was a proper, upright stallion novel author, and he definitely wouldn't have wanted something like this to happen in his work. A healthy maiden being replaced by a scum villain? How disheartening. Ordinary readers would throw the book to the ground. The two of them kept walking, the clouds above and scenery around them like a kaleidoscope, sometimes lengthening and twisting and other times shattering into 1,000 fragments, often erratic. The picture formed by the world they walked through was exceedingly eerie, like the people had been illustrated by Da Vinci while the backgrounds had been illustrated by Picasso. The style clash was extraordinarily intense. I like that they used Da Vinci and Picasso of all artists to be portrayed here. Interesting. I can kind of see what they're going for though. And also the sky like glitching seems like a function of a program rather than artwork. Suddenly, from within the dense layers of cloud emerged the buildings of a city. They stopped in their steps. Luo Binghe looked at Shen QingQiu, waiting for a signal. Counter soldiers with arms and flood with earthen dams. Shen QingQiu muttered to himself, "We deal with whatever situations arrive as appropriate. Forward." As they walked to the city gates, Luo Binghe raised his head, his expression becoming slightly puzzled. Shen QingQiu knew very well what he was thinking, that this city looked very familiar. Of course it was familiar. This was the city Luo Binghe had wandered while homeless during his childhood. The city gates naturally had no guards defending them and slowly opened by themselves. Shen QingQiu led him inside. This dream realm was frightening in its realism. When abstract, it was so abstract it became blobs of color. When photorealistic, it was so photorealistic as to be indistinguishable from reality. The city streets, markets, residents, vendor stalls, every single one was intricate enough to make your hair stand on end. Lit brightly with lamps, with people coming and going. From a distance they looked bustling and lively, but once Shen QingQiu drew close, even though he had long prepared himself, his heart almost still escaped his ribcage. These people moving about were, to a one, faceless. Every visage was a blurry mass, features unclear, and none of them made a sound. They didn't even seem like living people at all, yet they still milled around, wandering back and forth. The entire city was deathly silent, its busyness entirely uncanny. Luo Binghe had never seen such a scene like this. "Shizun," he said aghast. "What are these things?" Shen QingQiu was panicking a little from the terror, but he still took on the duty of being an expository encyclopedia. This is an illusory city created via a nightmare. In the dream realm, one can recreate inanimate objects, such as buildings and trees, but not living people. At most, they can be fashioned to this extent, speechless monsters that lack noses and faces. Even so, to be able to construct something on the scope of a city, and to make it nearly like unto reality, I'm afraid it can only be one person. Luo Binghe was incredibly cooperative, and he humbly sought instruction. One person? Meng Mo. Meng Mo, the dream demon, was the boss of this instance of a dream realm. I'm guessing this is Nightmare. I'm guessing. Meng Mo's true identity was that of a famously brilliant and accomplished elder among demons. Several hundred years ago, a bout of divine punishment had destroyed his physical body, but his powerful spirit endured undamaged. From then on, he had become a parasite within others' dream realms, subsisting by absorbing their spiritual energy and vitality. At the same time, he was also one of the protagonist's teachers on his road to becoming a demon. Thus, we can give him a more direct and intimate nickname, the Portable Grandfather. What? Meng Mo was the one who, after Luo Binghe broke through the barrier, formulaically took a liking to the protagonist. Formulaically taught him everything about the lost arts, and formulaically, from that point forth, occasionally helped the male lead think of plans for taking care of small fry. Luo Binghe still wanted to ask a few more questions, but then his eyes involuntarily swept through the crowd and froze for a split second. Despite knowing the answer, Shen QingQiu asked, "What's wrong?" "Faces," Luo Binghe blurted out. "Shizun, I think I just saw people now with faces." Shen QingQiu readily heeded his words and kept it concise. "We follow." They closely tailed the few figures who were incongruous with the people and the style of the surroundings, turning and twisting through the city until they finally stopped before an alley. In total, there were 5 people with faces. They appear to be 5 youths, each one equipped with a nose and features. The 4 taller figures surrounded one on the ground, and they cursed and yelled incessantly. Words like "little mongrel" and "bastard" poured from their mouths. They completely failed to notice the 2 people behind them. "It looks like they can't see us," Luo Binghe said. He looked at Shen QingQiu as if to ask, "Didn't you say Meng Mo was capable of creating people with complete features?" Time for more angst. Shen QingQiu heaved a sigh in his heart. Meng Mo indeed cannot create people using nightmares. But he didn't create these individuals. Luo Binghe looked more closely at their faces. Luo Binghe slowly turned his gaze towards them. Although his expression didn't change much, in a flash, a drop of cold sweat dripped down his forehead. "These are not illusions created by Meng Mo," said Shen QingQiu. "They are projections of real people from your memories. Meng Mo only awakened these reflections from the memories sleeping within your head." But Luo Binghe could no longer hear him. He placed his hands on his temples, and it seemed as if his head was twitching. Shen QingQiu knew that Luo Binghe's inner demons had already struck. Those 4 rowdy youths surrounded the child in the alley, who appeared to be only around 4 or 5 years old, as they punched and kicked him. That shabbily dressed child had covered his head with both arms and curled up on the ground, soundlessly taking the beating. It made one worry they would beat the young one to death. "This mongrel sure is blind, daring to enter our territory and snatch our food. It must be tired of living. Step on him. He's so pitiful, right? Hungry with nothing to eat, right? Beat him to death and he won't have to worry about that." Luo Binghe's head hurt like it was splitting open. That small, frail figure on the ground was his young self from the past. Through the disheveled hair and blood-stained face, 2 bright eyes like stars, like swords, sharp swords lancing forward, met his gaze. Luo Binghe was completely unable to look away. Pull yourself together, Shen QingQiu said lowly. It's only an illusion. All right. Chapter 17. However, the terrifying thing about Meng Mo was that he specialized in summoning the human heart's deepest terror, rage, and misery in order to destroy a person's psychological defenses. To a Luo Binghe who has already activated his god mode cheats, the power of 10,000 Meng Mos together would amount to little more than parlor tricks. But the Luo Binghe now, whose demonic blood had yet to awaken, was trapped in the dream realm and his dark memories. All he could see was his own powerlessness. Suddenly, the alley seemed distorted, transforming into another one. Oh, not good, Shen QingQiu thought. A second killing blow without time to prepare. They were in a broken-down little hut. The hut only had one bed, a crooked little table with a dimly lit oil lamp on top and a small wooden bench. On the bed lay a haggard old woman. With great effort, she tried to prop herself up, but from beginning to end, she was unable to do so. A small figure rushed in from outside. A tender-faced Luo Binghe, only a little over 10 years old, supported the woman. Around his neck hung that jade pendant. Mother, why are you getting up again? He asked anxiously. Didn't we say it's fine to rest? The woman coughed. Lying down doesn't help with anything. Might as well get up and wash the clothes. I already finished washing, said little Luo Binghe. Mother, lie down and wait for me to finish simmering your medicine. You can work after you take it and get better. The woman's face was ashen, her sickness long beyond cure, and she had little time left to live. She smiled while patting Luo Binghe's head. Binghe is so sweet. I feel like Shen QingQiu is going to do this at some point. He's going to say Binghe is so sweet at some point when the poison really gets to him, and it's going to be a thing. I'm just calling it now. I feel like that's going to happen. Little Luo Binghe lifted his face, forcing himself to smile. What does Mother want to eat? These days I have less and less appetite. The woman paused, though hesitantly added, the last time our house's young master threw out his white congee, I did wish for a little bit of a taste. I wonder if the kitchens have any yet. And he left. Little Luo Binghe vigorously nodded. I'll go ask her, Mother. Just asking is enough, the woman warned him again and again. If there's none left, then just make something light and soupy. As long as it fills the stomach, it's fine. Absolutely do not request any from the chef. Which is why I feel like if Shen QingQiu doesn't accept the food that Luo gives him, he gets really upset because it's a sign that he's not doing well. Luo Binghe promised profusely and ran out like the wind, his little feet clapping against the ground. After lying down for a while, the woman felt beneath her pillow for a needle and thread and started doing needlework. The lamplight in the hut became dimmer and dimmer. While Luo Binghe's mind was unclear, he reached out, trying to grasp something. Shen QingQiu grabbed his hand. Luo Binghe, he said forcefully, look carefully. This isn't your mother, and you are no longer that helpless child who could only endure her humiliation. One of the things that made this nightmare so lethal was that the more agitated the trapped victim became, the more damage it would do to their mind. Luo Binghe's present extreme instability was terribly harmful to his spirit. Another dangerous thing is that you needed to remember that you absolutely could not attack the people who appeared in your dream realm. Every single person was formed from the mind and consciousness of the dream realm's host. As soon as you attacked them, you would also be attacking your own brain. Many people, not knowing this or unable to control their emotions, attacked the people in the dream realm who'd hurt them in the past and thereby sent themselves into a coma. If Luo Binghe fell into that state, Shen QingQiu would of course also be trapped in the dream within him, alongside with him. The scenery around them shifted erratically. This nightmare was a collection of Luo Binghe's misfortunes and traumas from his short decade-plus years of life. The scene suddenly transformed to little Luo Binghe pleading with the house chef to grant his adopted mother a bowl of congee before being ridiculed by the manor's young master. Then it became the time right after he joined Qingjing Peak, where he'd been subjected to exclusion, and in spite of his numerous shizhong, his frail form straining as he swung a rusty axe or carried pails of water up the long stairs as his steps slowed more and more. Then the moment when his treasured jade pendant was snatched away, never to be found. The disordered scenes piled up as they came one after another without pause. The present Luo Binghe could neither see nor hear anything beyond this maelstrom of images and memories. Within his head, there was only an ongoing explosion of hatred, despair, suffering, helplessness, and fury from those times, churning endlessly within his chest and his mind. The only way to dispel this nightmare would be to undo the tangles in one's heart, thereby causing the nightmare to collapse on itself. But Luo Binghe's fists were clenched tightly. Cracking sounds came from his fingers. His breathing grew increasingly unsteady, and his eyes turned an unnatural red. And a faintly discernible current of spiritual power coursed around him, as if his desire to attack was growing nearly irresistible. Standing near him was supremely dangerous, thought Shen QingQiu. Don't attack them, Shen QingQiu said harshly. Even if you hit them, you'll be the one who's injured. Luo Binghe could no longer hear his words. He lifted his right arm, and a powerful spiritual blast blew forth from his hand, hurtling straight forward to destroy the people laughing freely within the illusion. Shen QingQiu cried out within his heart. No matter how painful, his body still understood its duties. He rushed over, throwing himself before the illusions and blocking the spiritual blast head on. It struck his lower abdomen. In an instant, Shen QingQiu felt like he'd been stomped on by an elephant, his vision growing dark. If this weren't the dream realm, he'd have vomited an endless fountain of blood, as expected of the protagonist. Shen QingQiu's face was drenched with tears. Luo Binghe was obviously only a young disciple, so how could he release such a powerful spiritual blast? It seemed that ever since he had unlocked the out-of-character function, not only had he not accomplished any grand achievements, the only thing he'd done aside from blocking blows and block more blows, and also block some blows, he was doing just as grand as a self-sacrificial meat shield, wasn't he? With this attack of Luo Binghe's, the illusion around them was broken, and the people and objects all shattered like glass into thousands of shards. The illusory landscape transformed into a remote forested wilderness. The sky was a dark blue, and the lone cold moon hung high and golden above their heads. Luo Binghe's mind instantly cleared. He first stared blankly, speechlessly at the half-kneeling Shen QingQiu, who was unable to stand. Then he lowered his head to look at his own palm, where a shred of remaining spiritual power was still flowing through his fingertips. Remembering vaguely what he'd just done, his face turned stark white. He threw himself to Shen QingQiu's side to support him, both worried and regretful. Oh, Shizun, why didn't you hit back? When QingQiu's level of spiritual power, he would have been wholly capable of returning Luo Binghe's spiritual blast, forcing their powers to collide and directly pitting them against each other until the stronger one won. Not only could he have dissolved Luo Binghe's attack, he could have deflected it back at him. Foolish child, Shen QingQiu said simply, expressing his innermost feelings. Then he continued weakly. The point was to ensure that you wouldn't be injured. If I deflected it back and injured you, what would be the purpose of that? That frail voice made Luo Binghe want to strike his own heart and kill himself. But now the one injured is Shizun. It hadn't been long since they'd fought those 3 matches against the Demon Realm, and Shizun had already, again, been injured for his sake, and this time by his own hand. Shen QingQiu saw the self-blame and misery on that child's face about to overflow, and unable to stand it, he said consolingly, "Can your cultivation compare to mine? Even if this master took several more blows, would it matter? It wouldn't matter." Luo Binghe would have preferred Shen QingQiu be as he had been in the past and vent his anger by viciously beating and cursing him. Even if he were utterly ignored, scorned, and ridiculed, it would have been easier on his heart. On the contrary, Shen QingQiu's tones and words were unerringly gentle. And so Luo Binghe was struck dumb and speechless, completely at a loss for what to do. After a long moment, he said in a low voice, "It's all my fault." The early Luo Binghe indeed walked the path of a brainless Moe white lotus. Shen QingQiu figured he'd once again fallen into the self-flagellating pattern of an anxious people-pleaser. "It has nothing to do with you," Shen QingQiu explained patiently. "The ways of demons are extremely unpredictable and impossible to guard against. However, if you don't want to run into similar trouble in the future, you must become stronger." These words were spoken purely out of his personal feelings. This was a word of immortals and monsters. This was a world of immortals and monsters where the strong ate the weak. Becoming stronger was the only way to guarantee that you wouldn't become cannon fodder to be pushed around by the world. Luo Binghe's thoughts shifted, and without speaking, he suddenly raised his head, fixing his steady gaze on Shen QingQiu. Shen QingQiu's heart thumped. Luo Binghe's eyes, dark like obsidian, flashed a light more dazzling than the reflection of the moon and stars. That look in his eyes! That kind of protagonist look, full of resolute conviction and blazing fighting spirit! Could it be? I've already become the protagonist's guiding star on his life path going forward? Luo Binghe fell into a proper kneeling position by Shen QingQiu's side. I understand, he said in a strong, clear voice. Wait, what did you understand this time? Can you not say only half your words every time? Tell me the rest! Shen QingQiu didn't notice that as Luo Binghe spoke this sentence, he didn't use this disciple to address himself. Luo Binghe tightly clenched his fist. This kind of thing, he said, enunciating each word. I definitely won't let it happen a second time. Letting Shizun protect his weak self, letting Shizun be injured because of him, this kind of thing absolutely could not happen again. Shen QingQiu let out a, oh, what is going on? He suddenly had this, the protagonist is protecting me, I feel so safe kind of feeling. What exactly was going on? Safe your ass! This person will carve you into a human stick figure in the future! Wake up! Shen QingQiu was filled with a plethora of complex emotions. Fuck. Originally, this conviction to become stronger to protect my important person should have been inspired by the protagonist seeing the female lead's frail, lovely, and delicately panting form after she sustained an injury while helping him. Was the system laying all the emotional labor associated with the female lead's role on Shen QingQiu? Yes, the answer is yes. Ah! All right, chapter 18! To hand out the wrong script at this point. Also, if you're giving me extra parts, could you at least offer me some complimentary meals? Taking on the main character's long and tedious lines while being paid in extras, thin and meager wages. This was labor exploitation. If I gotta be all these ladies, I better be compensated. Out of selfishness, Shen QingQiu managed to lift a hand and pat Luo Binghe on the head. Luo Binghe's original stubborn gaze froze, as if a handful of clear spring water had doused his flickering anger. Shen QingQiu thought for a moment. Actually, you need not worry too much. If you cannot become strong, I will stay by your side and protect you. Instead of letting Luo Binghe become that pitch-black basket case of a young man who made destroying the world his personal mission, it would be better if he could stay this delicate little white lotus forever. Shen QingQiu absolutely wouldn't have minded keeping this iteration of Luo Binghe by his side and taking care of him for a lifetime. These were his simple thoughts, but to the person hearing the words, they didn't sound so simple. Luo Binghe was wholly dumbfounded. No one had ever made such a straightforward and impassioned promise to him. Even though the world was large, few people in it could say, "You need not become strong, I am here. And of course I won't let you be bullied." And they weren't empty words. If Shizun said he could do it, he could. He had already proven time and time again with his actions that he would rather sustain grievous injury than let Luo Binghe suffer even a tiny bit of harm. Still, the sense of indulgence within those words, it was too much to bear. As the first surge of warmth slowly subsided, a burning heat crawled up Luo Binghe's face. Shen QingQiu coughed for a while, miserably discovering that coughing up blood within the dream realm was impossible, and then pinched Luo Binghe's arm. All right, first help me up. Luo Binghe realized where his wrist had been pinched neither hurt nor itched. Instead, it tingled. Immediately, he also realized his thoughts were overstepping, and he scolded himself a little. Thinking such nonsense at a time like this, how disrespectful to Shizun. He hurriedly organized his thoughts and did as he was told. Suddenly, a voice sounded out of nowhere. That hoarse... I wondered if he was going to show up or if we were going to end the dream. That hoarse, aged voice made an inquisitive noise and said, "Oh, you're quite something to actually break through this elder barrier, boy." That voice echoed all around them. It was impossible to determine which direction it had come from. This level's boss had finally appeared. Luo Binghe was supporting Shen QingQiu and didn't rise to his feet, his gaze wary. Meng Mo had appeared where Shen QingQiu was injured. The things were not looking good. Oh, while he was injured, Luo Binghe resolved to himself that if Meng Mo tried to attack, even with his paltry strength, he would still give his all to impede him and earn Shen QingQiu's every possible chance of survival. The instant he made his decision, that voice spoke again. "Come over here and let this elder see what kind of young hero is capable of such a thing." Luo Binghe looked at Shen QingQiu. The latter's entire mind was filled with the thought of, I finished my friendship performance. I can finally leave work now. And he was extremely cheerful. He even felt like teasing his student. The senior is asking for the young hero, he said. Why don't you reply? Luo Binghe's face reddened. He turned and spoke in a clear voice. You flatter me. The barrier was broken by my master's strength alone. The voice humphed, as if in disdain. Shen QingQiu knew why he humphed. Though he had blocked an attack for Luo Binghe, this was Luo Binghe's dream realm. And so Luo Binghe had needed to wrest back control of his consciousness before the nightmare could be broken. But Shen QingQiu couldn't be bothered to explain. The voice spoke. This elder wants you to come forward, boy. But I don't want this ordinary cultivator from Sangshong Mountain to hear our conversation. I'll have him sleep first. As expected, the circumstances were exactly the same when Ning Yingying had played this role in the original story. Everyone aside from Luo Binghe would be waved off stage by Meng Mo. A headache instantly came over Shen QingQiu and he collapsed heavily. Alarmed, Luo Binghe gathered him in his arms. Shizun! Shizun! He called. No need to worry, said Meng Mo. This elder had only sent him into a dream within a dream. He's just in a deeper sleep. It's called inception. Get over here, you! This time, it was possible to discern that the voice was coming from a pitch-black cave off to the west. Luo Binghe couldn't wake Shen QingQiu. He carefully laid his master on the ground and then turned and spoke in the direction of the voice. My master acknowledged you as a senior, so I must treat you with the same courtesy. I hope you won't also cause Shizun trouble. Meng Mo chuckled. I saw your memories, boy. This master of yours does not treat you well. Why won't you let me get rid of him? I would be doing you a favor. The memories Meng Mo had looked at were mostly those of the interactions between the original Shen QingQiu and Luo Binghe. Those memories were indeed the greatest in number, but Luo Binghe shook his head. Shizun isn't like you say, senior. In addition, no matter what, Shizun is my honored master. He can treat me however he likes, but as his disciple, I cannot disrespect him. Meng Mo humphed. Oh, how backward! The human realm's righteous path is full of this type of hypocritical morality. So what if he's honored or not, your master or whatever? If someone mistreats or harms me, they should be killed. Oh, he knew your cultivation was not sufficient to face Skyhammer, yet he still sent you out for that match where his intentions not clear. At that time, even I didn't believe I could win, said Luo Binghe. But Shizun believed in me. Not only did he give me an opportunity, he even encouraged me during the match, and in the end, I truly did win. The next sentence he said silently and only to himself. For my sake, Shizun had blocked 2 attacks meant for me. His goodwill is genuine. Meng Mo had only randomly skimmed some memory fragments. He didn't understand Shen QingQiu's behavior, nor did he want to try unraveling the issue. Though he was quite pleased with Luo Binghe's attitude. You, boy, are a person who values loyalty and bonds. Not even 1,000th of what Shizun does towards me, said Luo Binghe. If Meng Mo had a mouth, its corner would have been twitching. He opted to change the subject. After murmuring for a moment, he said, Oh, this elder senses that within your body something is being suppressed. Even though I cannot tell exactly what it is, it must be something surpassingly remarkable. Luo Binghe was a little shocked. What sort of thing is it that even you can't tell? Meng Mo chuckled. My race produces master cultivators in droves. It is not impossible that a demon more illustrious than this elder sealed something within your body. In any case, Meng Mo surely wasn't so eager to throw away his several hundred-year-old reputation that he'd waste time tricking an impoverished teenager who had nothing. Nevertheless, Luo Binghe stared in disbelief. Does this senior mean that that thing in my body is related to demons? What? Are you displeased? Meng Mo asked sneeringly, eager to sever any connections with the demon race. Luo Binghe's state of shock didn't last for too long. His thoughts whirled rapidly before he declared, The demon realm does many evils of all kinds, and has injured my master multiple times. Naturally, I cannot associate with them. Meng Mo became depressed. Oh, can you go 3 sentences without mentioning that master of yours, boy? Let this elder guess. The next thing you want to ask is, may I ask this senior if there's a method to remove this something from my body? Luo Binghe smiled wryly. Well, even if I ask, would this senior tell me? Meng Mo laughed boisterously. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but that it is truly beyond me. I can't even see it clearly. How can I tell you how to remove it? If not for the fact that I could make sense of you, boy, I would have already killed you both. Why else would I care to drag this out for so long? You think I've got so much time on my hands? Luo Binghe didn't speak. He was thinking, you don't even have a body anymore. You're just a shade being a parasite on other people's dream realms. If Meng Mo didn't have time, then who did? Meng Mo, unaware that Luo Binghe was internally ridiculing him, continued, removing it would be impossible for me, but suppressing it is not out of the question. Senior is willing to tell me how? Luo Binghe asked tentatively. Not only can this elder teach you how to suppress it, he can teach you much more, said Meng Mo leadingly. This implication was extremely blatant, and Luo Binghe understood. His heart sank. You want me to cultivate the demonic path? As his tone turned cold, Meng Mo's temper flared. What's wrong with cultivating the demonic path? If you cultivate the demonic path, that thing in your body will bring great benefits to your cultivation. You could leap 1,000 kilometers in a day. You could stand above the thousands. These are not empty words. With time, your power could overturn and sweep away the entirety of the 3 realms, and the heavens and earths within. It would all be simple. At that last part, Luo Binghe's heart jolted. 1,000 kilometers in a day, stand above the thousands. The entirety of 3 realms swept away before him. That was to say, he'd become strong. The strongest. He quickly rejected this thought. Shen QingQiu hated the way of demons more than anything. If he couldn't resist this Meng Mo's temptation to become a demonic cultivator, how could he face his master? When Shen QingQiu would be thunderously angry or drown in depression, either way, Luo Binghe definitely didn't want to find out. No. So he said, refusing. Meng Mo sneered. If you refuse to learn from me, you won't be able to suppress the demonic energy in your body. It's hidden deeply now, and you're fine because it can't be seen. But this elder senses that the seal in your body is weakening. One day in the future, when that power breaks through, how will that good Shifu of yours treat you? He who abhors evil and makes eliminating demons and upholding justice his mission. Even as Meng Mo articulated Luo Binghe's greatest worry, Luo Binghe clenched his teeth. This junior is but an ordinary cultivator. From achieving even foundation establishment is full of peril and hardships. Why do you insist I cultivate the demonic path? This question was way too high level. Other than the author, who could explain why all the great geniuses and masters were always crying and pleading for the protagonist to be their apprentice, disciple, son-in-law? No, in fact, even most authors probably didn't know the answer to this eternal riddle. You should appreciate others' kindnesses, boy. This elder can see that you are extraordinary. Would you rather all my knowledge vanish like smoke along with my physical body? How many people would beg for it to no avail? Luo Binghe showed no feeling on his face. At his refusal to reply, Meng Mo felt a rush of ominous premonition. Sure enough, the next time Luo Binghe opened his mouth, he did so with a pure and harmless smile. Surely Senior isn't so eager to teach me because he's unwilling to let his knowledge vanish without a successor. Right? He said, slow and composed. Meng Mo cried to himself, not good! Yes! Oh, I love it. I hope you all are okay with the Meng Mo voice. He just sounds like a raspy old spirit to me, so I want to give him a raspy old voice. Come on, theater! Chapter 19. If one lives by feeding off of others' dream realms, and one often changes hosts, one's spirit will weaken and suffer damage during the transfers, said Luo Binghe. We learned this from the Skinner demon. But if one were to live long-term within a set host body, one could instead preserve and nurture the spirit to stabilize it. He paused. Senior Meng Mo, could it be that you're already approaching your limit? And that's why you have to pick me to be the host that you'll raise? Having been seen through, Meng Mo neither denied it nor became angry. Instead, he grandly admitted, that's right. Who would have thought, boy, that you were actually so well learned and knowledgeable that even you would figure out something like that? Luo Binghe's expression was unperturbed. Unable to intuit what this boy was thinking, Meng Mo continued, however, don't assume that this elder absolutely must have you as a host. Wonderfully gifted demons number in the millions. Any one of them would beg on their knees for this special honor. You're the one who should be carefully considering whether you can afford to miss this opportunity. In truth, over these long years, Meng Mo's spirit had steadily degenerated. He had originally resided within a demonic device and happily lived there. With 180 years of meditation, he would have been brimming with energy again, but it just so happened that Sha Hualing, unaware of this, had at the end of a series of absolute coincidences used this device as a weapon and unloaded it onto Luo Binghe. Consequently, Meng Mo had not the strength to search for another host. Oh! But on the road to his doom, he unexpectedly discovered that buried within the body and consciousness of the boy he had newly resided in lay concealed a faintly discernible yet incredible power. He'd been ecstatic. How could he let this go? He already decided that no matter how adamantly Luo Binghe refused, he'd wheedle and pester, make threats and promises. Even if it meant exhausting every single method he had, he would persuade the boy to learn his demonic techniques in order to make Luo Binghe's body and consciousness even more suitable a residence for him. This elder will give you time, so think through it carefully, said Meng Mo. Otherwise, I'll trap you and your master's consciousness within the dream realm forever. This elder is capable of that much. Luo Binghe's head snapped up, and for an instant, as cold light flashed in the youth's eyes, Meng Mo froze, intimidated. Right now, you are discussing terms with me, and you are free to say anything. Luo Binghe's gentle and humble demeanor from moments before was entirely gone, his voice bitterly cold. But if you harm Shizun, any agreement is void. Meng Mo was frozen for a long time before he finally returned to himself, stunned that he'd actually been terrorized by the presence of an ordinary, insignificant cultivator of the human realm. He had intimidated souls throughout the three realms for hundreds of years. Even in the miserable battle where his corporal body had been destroyed, he had not lost to anyone in terms of presence. How could he have known that in future generations this presence would be called, the protagonist exclusive, the Aura of Badassery? The cave exploded with a sudden bellowing laughter. Oh boy, you really have quite the temper. As that ancient voice said those words, Luo Binghe felt his limbs become heavy, the scenery around him spinning before he was plunged into darkness. In a flash and with a start, Luo Binghe awoke inside the woodshed, his back utterly drenched with sweat. At the same time, Shen QingQiu sprang up in bed like a corpse coming alive after death. Head dizzy and vision spinning, he gasped for breath for a while, and only then did he finally relax. Horrible, 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 horrible enough to die! How come? How come when in the original work, Meng Mo dragged Ning Yingying into a dream within a dream, her dream was a comforting childhood memory wherein her parents let her pick flowers and ride horses? How come on his turn he had been surrounded by fist-sized man-eating wasps, and then had been dashing madly through a narrow passage of a tomb while closely being pursued by a giant ball of fire? Most terrifying thing was in the final part of the dream within a dream. Meng Mo had woven in Shen QingQiu's greatest fear. Within a dark, damp dungeon, he had been suspended in midair by a ring around his waist, unable to feel his limbs. When he just opened his mouth, no sound came out, and he could only helplessly hiss. His entire body burned with pain. Only after an unknown length of time did the sound of a stone door opening drift from outside the dungeon. Footsteps neither fast nor slow steadily approached. Then the shadow of a person was cast on the floor before him. On an ink-black hem, exquisite motifs were embroidered in silver thread. From that person emanated an ice-cold pressure, more stifling than the dungeon's airless darkness. Shen QingQiu couldn't clearly see that person's face, but he knew very well who they were. Meng Mo truly deserved to be a legend among demons. That dream realm had been far, far too realistic. Even now, the damp odor of decay seemed to linger in Shen QingQiu's nose, nauseating him. Shen QingQiu managed to keep sitting for a while, and then he rolled off the bed to begin to retch. Ding dong! Well, now of all fucking times, a system notification sprang up. Congratulations on completing the scenario, Meng Mo's Barrier. The system awards you 500 satisfaction points. Please continue to work hard. Shen QingQiu made a stop gesture and still had enough time to try settling debts. Let's have a proper discussion, he said. When you threatened to deduct satisfaction points, it wasn't 500, right? Why not set it at 500 for both? Are large punishments and small rewards really fair? And I went through the extra scenario of a dream within a dream. So why haven't you rewarded any extra B points to me? System, don't play dead. Let's sign a new contract. At this moment, someone slammed open the bamboo house's front door and rushed inside like a gust of wind. Shizun! Shen QingQiu knew who it was from the sound. He miserably rolled his eyes. He really didn't want to see that face right now. Luo Binghe had already thrown himself to Shen QingQiu's side, overflowing with anxiety. Oh, Shizun, how are you? Did the last fit feeling well? Truthfully, not too terrible. If you could stay away a bit further, I'd feel even better. Shen QingQiu averted his face with unyielding strength and poise, he stood by himself. Everything is well with this master. Luo Binghe had wanted to help him up, yet his hands had been reflexively shoved away. He couldn't help but freeze. Shen QingQiu didn't notice these small shifts in Luo Binghe's emotions. He tidied his clothes, verifying to himself that even though he only wore an inner robe, his image remained spotless. Did that Meng Mo trouble you further afterwards? Trouble my ass. Meng Mo would have been falling over himself to lick Luo Binghe's boots. Shen QingQiu was asking despite knowing. Luo Binghe hesitated a bit before he replied. That demon's elder's spiritual strength seemed to have been lacking. This disciple was expelled from the dream realm after a short while. Shizun, did you encounter anything inside the dream within a dream? Even if I did encounter something, could this master not handle it? Shen QingQiu boasted shamelessly. Of course he couldn't handle it! Even now, the shadow of being a human stick remained. With Luo Binghe so close to him, his entire body was tingling, and he couldn't help averting his gaze to suppress his fear. Unsure of the reason for this, Luo Binghe only saw that Shen QingQiu's expression was odd, his gaze no longer commonly looking straight at him like he usually did these days. It made his heart both fretful and anxious. Luckily, Shen QingQiu adjusted his attitude with a superlative quickness, remembering that he was a teacher and what he should be doing at the time. In the next instant, he reached out and took Luo Binghe's wrist. Being attacked by a demon is no joke, he said firmly. This master will examine you for a moment. We cannot be negligent. Yes, said Luo Binghe obediently, his wrist firmly held. His heart had just known a moment of ease, but now it was once more suspended. On the off chance Shen QingQiu uncovered Meng Mo and exposed the peculiarity within his body afterwards. But though Shen QingQiu diligently examined Luo Binghe for a time, he didn't detect anything off. Of course he didn't. Meng Mo had several hundred years' worth of skill and experience, and his celebrated reputation wasn't exaggerated in the slightest. However, Shen QingQiu still had to go through the motions. His examination fruitless, he nevertheless repeatedly urged Luo Binghe to visit Sangshao Peak and Xiongding Peak the next day to let other people examine him, and finally to absolutely say something if an issue arose. Yet, Luo Binghe had no intention of leaving. With the appearance of someone full of worry, he started and stopped speaking several times before asking, Shizun, demons, are they all wicked beyond redemption? Must every last one of them be exterminated? Shen QingQiu didn't reply to this question right away. He stood in place, indeed finding it difficult to answer. Seeing Luo Binghe petrified, forcibly keeping calm while also somewhat anticipating his teacher's answer, Shen QingQiu spoke slowly. Humans can be good or bad. So naturally, demons too can be good or evil. We often see demons victimizing people, but that doesn't mean there aren't cases where humans harm innocent demons. Don't put too much weight on race. This was the first time Luo Binghe had heard a teacher express this kind of opinion. He listened in a daze, his heart thumping wildly. But Shizun means that even if someone is closely connected to demons, that doesn't mean the heavens finds them intolerable. Is that right? How can you claim they're intolerable to the heavens in the first place? Shen QingQiu countered. If they're intolerable, why would the heavens let them exist? Who has the authority to say whether they ought to be tolerated or not? During this chain of questions, Luo Binghe's eyes gradually lit up. There was within him a faint sense of burning passion. Luo Binghe, you may choose to ignore the words of this master that they tell you from here on out, Shen QingQiu said at last, but you must always remember what I've told you from here today. In this world, there is nothing intolerable to the heavens. This is true for all races, as it's true for all humans. At this time, though Luo Binghe's heart leaned towards the righteous path, he wasn't a pedant. In any case, since whatever was within him couldn't be removed, why not put it to good use? He absolutely had to become stronger. So strong that he would never be powerless. Strong enough that he could protect Shizun from any hand that dared to reach for him. Seeing Luo Binghe's eyes so dazzlingly bright, Shen QingQiu couldn't imagine what he was thinking, but his own thoughts were a jumbled mess. His advice this time wasn't coming purely from a place of having developed an addiction to being the sage guiding the protagonist's life journey. The idea of the heavens' magnanimity was a universal concept, older than time itself, and had been recycled like reheated old rice for decades by the historical wuxia and zhangxia genres without the slightest hint of progress. But in this world of ocean-deep hatred between humans and demons, who were unable to coexist and who had emerged in countless great wars in the past up to the present, the concept was extremely unconventional. Anyone who espoused it risked unilateral condemnation. As someone of mixed lineage, he had been extremely difficult for the original Luo Binghe to avoid being impacted by human hatred of demons and vice versa. Since the greater half of his life had been harsh and full of misfortunes, he'd even begun to despair and think perhaps the world and heavens both found his existence intolerable, that he should never have been born. Shen QingQiu hoped that, from this point forth, these words could plant a seed within Luo Binghe's heart and broaden his perspective. That in the future, when facing the truth of his heritage, he could remain optimistic and not take attacks on his lineage to heart. Perhaps then his behavior wouldn't trend so extreme, and he wouldn't become bent on taking revenge on the world. Perhaps, even if someday in the future Luo Binghe had to face a Shen QingQiu who would throw him down into the endless abyss, he'd be able to understand that this betrayal wasn't his fault. If that was possible, then even in this scenario, if it arrived, and the system forced Shen QingQiu to say lines like, "Humans and demons can't coexist, their hatred is ocean deep and cannot overcome, you fucker, hurry up and die," thereby slapping himself so hard that he sent himself flying as well that would be that. Now that the atmosphere had grown heavy, Shen QingQiu felt he'd gone overboard with his cool act. With his terror of embarrassment about to erupt, he coughed once. "That said, demons are naturally gifted with spiritual strength, far more than humans," he said. "If their strength could be used for good and was dedicated to the righteous path, to the common people, then how could that not be a good thing?" Demons had exceptional talent for cultivation and absolutely crushed the human realm in that arena. As the races were different, so too were their energy systems. Humans relied on the spiritual qi, where demons relied on demonic qi. Though Shen QingQiu had reckoned that the two were basically the same, with only the color and names being distinct. Maybe the demon realm had good feng shui or something, but the vast majority of demons were born fully charged with demonic qi. At age 3, they could rip apart a human with their bare hands, and at age 8, they could split mountains and crack stone. This was a bit of an exaggeration. However, the truth was that many humans had only mediocre aptitude. Even after cultivating for several decades, they could often only achieve the skill level of a small demon infant. Even more humans were like dried up ponds, their spiritual strength practically a perfect egg, i.e. 0. These humans were often said to be lacking spiritual roots or absent the lot for immortality. It couldn't get worse than that. If it weren't for the humans' comparative love of propagating and for demons being generally sparse in number, the human realm would have long ago been colonized by demons. Honestly, they were just coasting on the fact that demon family planning was so strict. After suffering the torments of this world-changing journey, Shen QingQiu hadn't slept the entire night. Two dark bags had already appeared under his eyes. He waved his hand. "It's very late. If there's nothing else, then go rest." Luo Binghe obediently asked to be excused, but he hadn't walked far when he heard Shen QingQiu call from behind. "Come back." "Oh yeah, all right. I'm down for it. Yeah." Well, that did not end in nearly the cliffhanger I thought it was going to be. I thought that ended rather well. I was really glad that I read chapter 19 as well, because I was like, ooh, I wanted to get through the full dream sequence, and we pretty much do. So this series does one thing that's kind of strange. It does end on peculiar elements. Like, it almost seems like it does kind of like the Untamed does with Modao Zushi in the live action series, where it just kind of like ends halfway through a scene and you're like, but wait, there was more. But it doesn't end like halfway through a conversation, so you kind of just like let it go and you're like, okay, well, we technically could stop here. I guess that's a place. There is a really cool illustration for this chapter set that I was really glad. I always hate when I get a chapter set and there's no images. I'm like, but luckily we have a really cool picture of old Luo Binghe. And I really like how Meng Mo is designed. Like, it's basically Luo Binghe standing up for Shizun, standing up for Shen QingQiu. I really like the design of Meng Mo. I like that he's called Meng Mo and not Nightmare. I think that Nightmare makes him sound kind of like a Kingdom Hearts villain. But I like Meng Mo. I think that's a cool name. But I really like how they have like this fan decal on the back of their robe, and then the back of their hair is like wispy, and it has like a little skull clip that ties it back. They remind me of a character in Heaven Official's Blessing whose name I cannot say because it's a spoiler, but they're kind of like a mentor-y figure that seems a little shadowy. They end up being okay in the story, but here I feel like Meng Mo is the antagonist, the main antagonist, if anything. If you know what character you think I'm talking about, you can comment down below. But I really liked this chapter set. I thought it was very interesting, and Shen seems like he's slowly becoming at least more aware of the possibility that he is now being in the female leads roles. And I think he's like, wait a minute, there's definitely some connections to some other MXTX characters. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Shi Lian from Heaven Official's Blessing and over the course of this. So just, if you've not seen Heaven Official's Blessing, I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible, but just be aware I'm going to talk a little bit about his character. But yeah, so I also like how this chapter set gives us some more illustrations and explanations of how the dream realms work and who's responsible and what ends up happening there. I like the idea that normally the mindscape of the dream realm relates to that person's inner thoughts. And so Shen is kind of like, damn, like it's really sad in here because Luo Binghe's like inner thoughts is this desolate, bleak area. I'm going to be curious if they keep going back and forth into the dream realm, if it happens again, and the next time Shen goes in, it's like this beautiful, lush paradise, and Shen's like, what, how did this happen? And it's because of his influence on Luo. I'm gonna be really, really, really excited to see if that ends up happening. Also, Shen QingQiu likes divulging spoilers. How dare you, sir? We are different in that regard. I thought we were similar. But yeah, so the dream realm basically is about the idea of Luo being tempted. And so the system alerts Shen that there's a subplot that's important, which is the dream demon Meng Mo's barrier. And you have to assist Luo Binghe in defeating Meng Mo's illusion. Otherwise, you're going to have 1,000 points deducted. And so Shen QingQiu is like, now wait a minute, hold on a second. This is normally not for me to be a part of. This is for the leading lady to be a part of. So earlier on in the last set of chapters last week, Shen was just like, oh wow, you know, in the story this other girl gets poisoned and this is how Luo finds the poison. But I mean, he had sex with her. I don't know if he would do that with me, but probably not. And, you know, he kind of shrugs it off. Here we have the idea that in the OG version, Luo Binghe, the only person he could connect with that he felt was his confidant was Ning Yingying. She was the only one. She was the only one because at that point in the original story, everybody else was terrible to him. He had nobody else to connect to, so she was the only one that he could go with, and she's annoying as hell. So she probably had all the extra chapters and stuff, but he only felt confident around her. Here, Luo Binghe goes with who he admires, which is his Shizun, which is Shen QingQiu. And Shen QingQiu is like, this is supposed to be where Luo, like, you know, he unravels all of his complexes and uses love to help defeat the inner demons. And so, interestingly enough, in the OG part, Luo Binghe, he unravels complexes and his love ends up winning. Now, that same thing happens here, just while Shen's in the dream within the dream, when he's in Inception. But in the original version, Ning Ying Ying, she ends up injured and, put in the dream. And in the dream, it's like horses and rainbows, which is absolutely hilarious to me, right? She ends up with horses and rainbows in her dream. So I'm glad that she wasn't hurt. I'm glad Ning Ying Ying in the OG was at least having a pleasant dream. And that injury that she sustains gets Luo Binghe fired up, right? Fired up to protect her, right? Here, in this scenario, Shen ends up taking the blast to keep Luo from suffering any brain damage, and he ends up in the dream where he's essentially at the end of the story where it's the bad ending and he's like hoisted up as a human stick figure. Now, in the Donghua, whenever we saw Shen and we had like the adult Luo Binghe around the corner with that deep husky voice, I mean, I was waiting for it to happen in this version so we get to read like Luo Binghe saying some dialogue, but it doesn't quite ring as true when you don't actually get to see it, so it's all right. I like that they're keeping it a mystery. I like they're keeping adult Luo Binghe a mystery to us. We don't get to see that yet. Shen already knows what he's like as an adult in the OG version, but we don't get to see that. And I like the novels being a little bit mysterious with that. I appreciate it. It's a little tease, and it's subtle, and MXTX is knowing where to hold her cards, and that's one of the moments, so I really like that. But he has this terrible dream, and him getting injured ends up being Luo Binghe's conviction of his kindness. And we're going to talk about that going in. So it's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit different. The onus is a little bit more on Luo Binghe in this version to keep the women safe. And in this version, Shen kind of like protects him as well, which is a thing. So yeah. But I like that Shen kind of doesn't understand like why he's been chosen to do this realm. He's like, why me? Why am I here? Why am I his trusted confidant? And you would think in that moment Shen would be like, does he really think this about me? Shen doesn't quite put two and two together, which is fine. He's got enough on his plate. But I like that Shen also is like, I don't want to provide free psychological therapy. He's a psych major, but he doesn't want to have to do it, right? So I also like how Shen's character, Shen Yan, talks about, in the past, previously, he would have cussed out the author for having this sort of thing happen. But here, it's not necessarily the author's fault. It's just the genre. And he's like, and again, Shen thinks so little of himself in this moment that he's like, well, why would Luo Binghe want to be with me instead of a maiden? And I'm like, oh, Shen. I don't think you even realize yet. Shen does not know how deep Luo's love for him goes. So I really like the idea of how they describe the dream realm. I don't think the Donghua does it quite justice to the novel, because I like the idea of it looking kind of like an AI glitch on the ceiling, but then like everything's like a mixture of styles of art forms. Honestly, I think if the Donghua wanted to kind of make it look weird, they could have taken that CGI and mixed in some like 2D animation aspects and like make it look off, but that would have taken a lot of work and a lot of budget, which they didn't seem to have, so we won't hold it against them. But also, the idea of the faces just not having like any features is really, really creepy. So yeah, Meng Mo is this spirit that's been going around host to host. I like that we sort of had a preview of the type of spirit Meng Mo is by looking at the Skinner demon. Meng Mo is kind of like the ancient boss level version of that, which is really interesting. And then whereas the Donghua had only one person being spotted in the crowd with a face, here there are 5. Now, originally, when the 5 were surrounding Luo Binghe and Shen QingQiu was like, oh no, I thought that it was going to be like teen Luo Binghe being surrounded by Ming Fan, by the OG Shen QingQiu and all of that, and they were like kicking him and being mean to him. I thought we were going to get that, but that's not what we get. And then we flash back to the scene with the mom in chapter 17 that she's there talking about, like, and again, the jade pendant. The jade pendant was not brought up. I keep waiting. I thought maybe, here's the thing, because the novel and the Donghua are different at this point, I can't trust what the Donghua has given me as content because it could be totally different in the novel. I keep thinking that Shen QingQiu is going to bring that pendant up. But he didn't. I thought he was maybe going to use it in this chapter set to maybe lure Luo Binghe out of his, his dream within a dream, but it doesn't end up using it. He's saving that. That's going to be an important plot point at some segment in the story. We're just not there yet. But it is really sad, like with the mom and her being like, oh, I don't want to eat. You're fine. That made me realize in the reaction that every time when Shen initially didn't want to eat the food and Luo got so disheartened, it wasn't because Luo was mad that Shen QingQiu didn't want his food and that he'd wasted time making it. It was because when his mom was dying, she wasn't hungry. And so Luo associates, oh, you're not eating with, oh, you could be dying. And so that's why he worries about Shen. So whenever Shen's eating and enjoying the food, it means he's healthy and that makes Luo feel better. So it's like it adds a whole nother context to why he cooks and why he wants he wants to cook because he wants to feed people to make them feel, loved. And that's what he wanted to do is for his mom, and he was denied that. So it all ties back, right? The whole aspect of love is tied to cooking. But also something that I think that Shen is trying to do in this, and I want to tie this back to the OG versus the new story. In the OG, because Shen was over here trying to kill him. Because he was trying to kill Luo Binghe. This obviously couldn't happen. But what ended up being was that all of these women needed Luo Binghe. And Luo Binghe, kind of like with his mom, was someone that wanted to protect and be strong for them. Right? Which in turns, along with, Shen trying to kill him, leads to Luo accepting his demon heritage and the training to make himself stronger. So I don't know if I really said this in last week's discussion as much, but the whole scene in the cave where the woman gets poisoned and she throws herself onto Luo Binghe, going back and rereading that, and I'm sure by now I'll see comments that will say the same, but going back through there, it almost read like when I reread that section that Luo didn't necessarily want to have sex with her in the original story, but because she was like, oh, I need you right now and you'll make me feel better and you'll save me, because she said she needed him, he went along with it and was like, oh, I guess, okay, yeah, I'll have sex. And it seems like all these women in this story are all like begging for him and pleading with him because they need him for something. And Luo's never been needed before. He's always been on the short end of the stick. So it's almost like a toxic, like, coping mechanism where he's like, sure, I'll have sex with you. Sure, I'll help you. Sure, I'll kill these people for you. If it makes me feel useful and needed, of course. And it makes him feel like it was just a product of him not wanting to say no because he's never been needed before. He's always been abused. So in some regards, it's almost like Luo Binghe, he's not able to stand for himself. Even though he's the protagonist and does all these things, it almost seems like it's all for just these people. Whereas in the OG version, even though Shen QingQiu, all he really needs Luo Binghe to do is not kill him. So, in other words, Shen actually wants to protect Luo Binghe, and Luo Binghe is training to be strong and protect him as well, to protect him back. But it's more like on an equal term. It's not like he's protecting Shen because Shen's a frail, delicate maiden. It's because, no, you protected me, I'm going to protect you. We got each other's back. It's the BL formula that I love, right? And so, because Shen's whole thing, and I was going to bring this up, what reminds me of Shi Lian, is that Shen's like, why am I in the role of the delicate maiden? I am not a delicate maiden. I'm a man, damn it. And I feel like in some regards that reminds me of Shi Lian and Heaven Official's Blessing, without revealing anything with the plot. Shi Lian is a manly man. There's like several on Twitter that's like the buff Shi Lian agenda, but I feel like his character often gets relegated as being more dainty or feminine of the protagonists, and Shi Lian doesn't like that. He's like, no, I'm a man. I don't want to be a woman. I don't want to be associated with femininity. I am a man. And I feel like Shen QingQiu is the exact same way. He doesn't want to be feminized. He wants to say, no, this is my identity. This is who I am. Don't be changing it. And so I feel like there's a connection there. And I feel like Shen QingQiu, they're going to be like on equal terms. And the thing of it is that Shen is trying to tell Luo Binghe that he can be part of the demon realm, but do good. Whereas in the OG version, it was kind of like, no, you're a demon, so let's cultivate these powers so you can take over the world. And it's like, okay. So there is subtle little differences being established with the end result of what Luo takes away from this dream realm with Ning Ying versus Shen QingQiu. So yeah. And Shen QingQiu says, don't attack them or you'll end up in a coma. And that's when he ends up, you know, protecting him from the blast. And this part here, though, I feel like for a moment, Shen he drops character and he says something without any agenda. Because Luo's like, why didn't you hit back? And Shen's like, yeah, I could do that, but I didn't want you to be injured. And the thing is, he's like, one, I knew you were. There is a sense of it where Shen's like, I know he's not going to be injured because he has the plot armor. But then he's like, why would I waste time? Why would I even try to injure you from the start? That's why I jumped in to save you. Why would I do that? And that's kind of the moment that Luo is like, oh my God, like you're doing this to save me. Holy cow. Which we could argue that Ning Ying said the same thing, but he's like, it wouldn't have mattered even if I'd taken blows, it's okay. I think in that regard, Shen and Ning Ying are a little bit different because Ning Ying, she wouldn't have said that she could handle the blow. She probably just did. She's like, I did it because I loved you. And Shen's like, no, I was fine anyway. It was going to be okay. So Luo blames himself. And Shen is like, no, it's okay. And he tries. I mean, I get what Shen's doing. Shen is on the one hand trying to be like, to save his skin, being like, no, demons are okay. I'm not totally against them, so that when I have to kick you down in the pit, know that it was just for reasons, not because I actually hate you. But also I like that Shen says later on, we get to it, that he's kind of tired of all the stereotypes and tropes of demons in the story, and he wants to change that up, right? And I thought that was really interesting. He talked about Luo Binghe being like a mixture of different races, of different species in this case. And it kind of felt like MXTX was making a more meta comment on how, you know, should Luo be ashamed of his culture and his heritage, regardless of both sides? And the answer is no. And Shen QingQiu kind of saying, yeah, you know, every culture, every population has good people and bad people in it. There's nothing we can do about that. But just because even if you're of a mixed ethnicity, that doesn't make you inherently bad or good. It doesn't make you mixed. You are yourself. So just be yourself. And I really like the message. I feel like it was a moment where MXTX was giving us a meta commentary about society to be like, hey, let's not judge people by their ethnicities, please, and where they're from. And yeah, it kind of hits the nail on the head. I do love Shen being like, have I become the guiding star in his path going forward? And he's like, tell me the rest. I love that Shen is just so mind blown but has realized that he has taken on this role. And he's like, has a system. My favorite part is that Shen QingQiu is like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that the system is going to give me the role of 300 women? Shen's like, hold on, where's my compensation? Why am I getting paid overtime? What's going on? But I'm glad Shen is realizing that he is going to be part of the system in this way. I'm glad he's realizing that and coming to terms with it. That's a good thing, right? He's like, why is all this emotional labor going on to me? Give me extra parts, at least give me complimentary meals. And I love, again, we talk about the ace Shen agenda, but it's just like, Shen isn't thinking about, oh, well, if I'm going to be in the female role, I'm going to get all the sex, or I'm going to get all the making out, or all the perks and everything. He's like, I want my free meals, please. Can you give me food vouchers as compensation, please? That's just hilarious. So yeah. And then out of selfishness, he patted Luo Binghe on the head. Now, that out of selfishness part means that Shen wanted to pat him on the head. So he let himself have this out of character moment. Love it. Love it. So he says here, he's like, you don't need to worry about much. If you can't become strong, I'm going to stay by your side and protect you. I like that he talks about this. He's like, look, he's like, I don't want everything to be on Luo Binghe's back. I don't want him to like have this pressure. Instead of letting him become this pitch black basket case who was made to destroy the world, his personal mission, it'd be better if he could stay a little white lotus forever. The little white lotus part reminded me a lot of a character of Heaven Official's Blessing who Constant calls Shilian. Angelic White Lotus, which I won't say his name either because spoilers, but y'all know he's one of my favorites. So, but he's like, he would rather keep Luo as gentle as possible. But we all know that Luo has a vicious temper streak. So Luo Binghe in the past becomes this angry basket case. Whereas here, Shen would like him to be a little more gentle. Now, whether that pans out or not, I don't know. We'll have to see where that goes. But I don't blame Shen for trying to do what he's doing. And he's like, you don't have to worry about being bullied. I'll help keep you strong. And Luo taking all of these words to heart. It's interesting that Shen, I don't think, realizes how much he takes to heart in this conversation. But Luo takes a lot to heart. I like the description of like when the wrist had been pinched that it just tingled. It kind of made me think of like when your arm falls asleep, if you've like laid on it wrong the whole time and then you like move it and it feels like pins and needles and there's like no weight, all the sensation's gone. That's happened before to me. Is it not the most weirdest feeling? Like if your arm goes limp and it's like gone asleep and you can't feel any sensation and it just hangs there loosely. It is the most terrifying feeling. I'm like, I can't imagine. I also imagine that's how Shen QingQiu felt when he was like strung up as the human stick. He had like phantom limb syndrome. He couldn't feel any of his arms or legs because they were gone. Nope. So, my throat was kind of scratchy anyway because I had like kind of a scratchy throat. So I was like, I'm just going to lean into it to do Meng Mo's voice. So I hope you all were okay with that. I felt like Flotsam and Jetsam from Little Mermaid. But yeah, so he appears and offers up. And so Shen QingQiu says, I finished my friendship performance. I can finally leave work now. Shen QingQiu still thinks that he's just acting it out. And again, I keep wondering if that is going to come back and bite Shen QingQiu later. If Meng Mo realizes down the road how this is going and he's like, don't you see what's happening, Luo Binghe? Don't you see what Shen QingQiu's doing? We'll see if that comes back to bite him, but he's just convinced he's playing a role, right? And so Shen collapses having the dream within a dream, and then Luo ends up having the conversation with Meng Mo that we saw in the Donghua about his Shizun. What I like about it is that they basically point out that Meng Mo is kind of like a generated boss in this world. They aren't privy to the changes that have been happening in the novel. So all they know to do is go back to the bad memories of the past and bring those up. So we might as well talk about Meng Mo bringing up memories of Shen QingQiu and Luo Binghe. Now, I would imagine in the original story, when those things were brought up, that only furthered his hatred, and he agreed to or at least he doesn't agree to take on Meng Mo because the mission was to defeat the barrier. So, and he was tempted by Meng Mo. I feel like in the original novel, he didn't stick around because he wanted to get Ning Ying out of there, but he heard Meng Mo out and then agreed to let him train him later on because he realized that everything that was said about Shen QingQiu was true. And he wanted to get revenge on the world and get revenge on Shen QingQiu. I feel like that was the case. Whereas in this new version with Meng Mo, the only reason I think Luo Binghe would agree to work with him would be to protect and be equal to Shen QingQiu. And Shen QingQiu's conversation about demons being able to use their power for good. Because we know in the original that was not a conversation that was had, and that's kind of how Meng Mo got to him. He's like, well, Shen QingQiu hates demons. As soon as he finds out you're a demon, he'll try to kill you. And Luo Binghe is like, oh my God, and that leads to like the abyss and him getting kicked down it. Whereas here, we don't exactly still know how this whole abyss thing is going to go down. I'm kind of glad now at this point that the Donghua didn't show us because I want to find out what ends up happening. And so I feel like that now that Shen QingQiu's had this conversation with him where he's like, hey, there's good and bad demons too. You could use your powers for good. You don't have to use it for evil. I'm going to be really curious to see how that ends up going down. Shen QingQiu talks about it a little bit, and we'll get to it here in a second, but yeah, the way that Meng Mo words it, he's just like, well, I could teach you all the ways of being a demon and all these things that could, save anybody you want. It felt very much like Darth Sidious, like Palpatine, trying to woo Anakin Skywalker over the dark side, being like, but you could save Padme. And then Anakin's like, but I could save Padme. And then it ends up not going anywhere, right? Because Meng Mo doesn't really know how to save Padme, or Shen QingQiu in this case. But I'm curious to see how it's going to go. I could see if Luo Binghe believes that Shen QingQiu is in danger, or when he finds out about the poison. That's the thing. He doesn't know about the poison yet. When he finds out about the poison, it could be that Luo Binghe is like, if I become a demon cultivator and learn from you, Meng Mo, is there a chance I could save Shen QingQiu from the poison? And Meng Mo is going to be like, oh, sure, of course, yeah. And then it's going to go from there. Don't know. But he's like, you're going to teach me how. And he's like, I can tell you much, much more. And so that's when he's like, no, I don't want to do this path. And Meng Mo's like, well, eventually this seal around your body is going to weaken and burst free. And then once it does, and everybody sees that you're part demon, how do you think Shen QingQiu is going to accept you? Now, the thing of it is, Shen QingQiu can accept him because of what he's told him in this set of chapters, and also because he already knows everything, so he's going to be able to think about how to counter it. So it's really all in Luo Binghe's head how he's going to deal with this and what he thinks Shen's reaction is going to be, right? So then I love the idea that Luo figures it all out. He's like, you're just trying to possess me and feed off of my dreams like the Skinner demon. That's what you're trying to get at. And he's like, oh, well, you figured it out, but anybody would consider this a special honor. So could you miss this opportunity? I don't know if Meng Mo is going to end up possessing Luo or just teaching him and that's it. I don't know how the story is going to make it go because the novel's already changed so much. I don't know how it's going to end up being once we get to the very end of it, right? So he's like, and he tries to threaten to keep Shen QingQiu and Luo Binghe in the dream realm. And Luo, I just imagine this little 14-year-old boy being like, you're not going to hurt Shizun. And it's like, oh no. It does get very interesting at the very end of this because there seems to be like this moment between Luo and Shen. But knowing that Luo is so young, Shen's just kind of like, we can't do anything with this. So again, I'm going to be really curious when they get older how we go about that and what's going to end up changing. But yes, the aura of badassery in future generations that's what the presence is called. I wonder if that presence was described by Luo Binghe's like little children, his progeny, his grandchildren that go on, if they all create this. Meanwhile, Shen is having a horrible time of the dream within a dream, and his biggest fear is ending up as a human stick, like just hung from the dungeon, right? And the way that MXTX describes like the odor of decay, like the skin dampening and decaying around it, it's like gross, absolutely gross. But yes, an ink black hem, exquisite motifs embroidered in silk thread. I love that we only get from like the boots to the hem of the coat. We don't get to see anything above, just the hem and the coat. And he's like, Meng Mo deserved to be a legend among demons. It was too realistic. Shen QingQiu does not want to encounter Luo Binghe at his worst, right? As he knows him from the novel. But he managed to get to 1,000 satisfaction points. So we know that he had like, what, 1,045 in the last one. Now he has 1,545. I don't know. It'll be curious to see if they give us another counter in the next chapter set. He talked a little bit about in this set gaining like little extra points here and there, doing little things. So that number may be off. We'll have to check that for the next volume and see where we go to from there. But I love these, like, also, he goes, why aren't you rewarding me the extra B points? Why am I not getting extra overtime points for this? He's like, sign a new contract. What are you doing? Why aren't you giving me this? And then Luo comes in. And of course, Shen is still reeling from seeing adult Luo Binghe, who is the cause of all his trauma. Like, he's still reeling from that experience from the dream, within a dream. And then he sees the real Luo, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. And of course, there's this miscommunication between the both of them where neither of them really know what each other is thinking and neither of them understand the experience each other has just had. So there is a little miscommunication and it's like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? It's handled very well. It's handled very well in this. But he ends up saying, he's like, the shadow of being a human stick remained. And so Shen is not having any romantic thoughts of Luo at this point. He's more afraid of Luo and what he could become. Whereas Luo, I feel, is having lots of emotional thoughts. And I like that MXTX doesn't describe it as like romance or sexuality because, again, Luo is only 14 or 15. But instead, Luo is experiencing like a crush, like an adoration that is going to blossom into something else when they get older. And I appreciate that MXTX phrases it like that. So I liked also, too, that the examination isn't anything sexual. It's just Shen running through the motions as he thinks about things. And so at this point, Shen believes that Luo has possibly been possessed by Meng Mo or Meng Mo has affected him. He has no clue what their conversation was like. He only knows what happened in the original novel, so he thinks that it might pan out the same way here. And so what he's trying to do is just kind of like circumvent or keep Luo from going completely down the dark path by giving him the speech about the demons. Saying that, and I love the way he says, don't place too much weight on race. And Luo is just like, I've never heard of anything like this. Like, what are you doing? And then Shen kind of goes through and says that, like, you know, you can choose to ignore me, but remember, there is nothing intolerable to the heavens. This is true for all races and for humans. Like, you wouldn't be here if you were intolerable. Demons wouldn't exist if they were intolerable. And I love that for Luo, it's like for the first time telling him that he's, you know, at one point he had questioned whether he should have even been born, which is such a terrible thing to think. And Shin's like, no, you deserve to be here. You do. It's just what you make of this world is going to determine like the impact that you leave on it. And it's very sincere. And I kind of like in this moment that Shin, you know, he's not just being guided by him pretending to be Shen QingQiu and going along with the story at this point. He's actually talking about this concept that he's seen recycled over and over again through different wuxia and zhansha genres where there's been no progress. And it's kind of definitely MXTX taking a moment to be meta and saying, look, we've been telling these stories for hundreds and hundreds of years. They're the same themes. They're the same concepts. Could we update it a little bit? Like, I love that they're trying to be like, can we modernize this? Just a hot second, just a wee bit, please. Can we make this a little bit more modern? Thank you very much, since we're in the 21st century. I love that. I love that the MXTX kind of puts themselves in Shin's shoes, and Shin gives us this monologue about how there's this hatred between humans and demons, and you can make that concept of human and demons transcend any culture and any group now in our own world. MXTX is just thinking, like, we have two groups of people. Why are one called humans? Why are one called demons? We may be different. We may have different circumstances. We may have different resources. We may have different privileges. But we still are capable of having good people and bad people within our own populations. Why are we having this conversation? Why aren't we updating it? And I'm like, yay! And then even talking about someone with a mixed lineage like Luo Binghe, I feel like you could have that conversation. I feel like anybody that's from a mixed lineage that feels ostracized or feels like because I think Luo Binghe is a good example, and I'm really curious to see what MXTX does with it, of showing someone that's doesn't exactly have one foot in either realm of their lineage, and it's like, what does that do for a person, and what do we do to help that person, you know, succeed and enjoy their life? And that's kind of what Shin's doing. And I feel like there's so much you can do with that concept, and I'm really excited about it. But I feel like if you are someone of mixed lineage, you may be able to look at Luo Binghe and kind of understand the emotions that they're feeling and understand what they're going through, and there's somebody you can relate to. So I'm like, yeah, awesome. I love that. That's really cool. I like the way that it's handled. But then I like that Shin says, you know, he says someday in the future, Luo's going to have to face Shin, who would throw him down the endless abyss, and he would be able to understand this betrayal wasn't his fault. And I like that, to me, and I could be wrong, I'm reading it as Shin saying, look, it's it's not Luo's fault that this is happening. It's something else. I could be wrong. Either Shen doesn't want Luo to believe that it's Luo's own fault that he ended up in the abyss, or he doesn't want to believe that it's Shen's fault. So either way, I'm glad that Shen is thinking about this. And then he says, if that was possible, then even if the scenario arrived and the system forced Shen to say lines like, well, humans and demons can't coexist together. Their hatred is in ocean deep and cannot be overcome. You fucker, hurry up and die! That, he'd slap himself so hard that he'd send himself flying. Well, that would be that. I like the Shen's like, I want you to have this idea that you're worth it. It's fine. So even if I have to say some bullshit to you later, you're still going to be able to overcome it. And that's when Shen adds, you can do your powers for good and to help the common people and to be righteous with it. Would that be so bad? So they establish that the humans rely on spiritual chi and demonics rely on demonic chi, but demons normally are born with like an exuberant amount. They're naturally talented. They're able to like do things without worry, whereas humans may not be able to ever get to the level that they are, even if they try for decades and decades and decades, right? The only difference is demons are generally sparse in number and humans propagate really, really quickly. So that's kind of, why one has more advantage over the other. So then it looks like that Luo's about to he's about to leave, and Shen QingQiu is going to let him go, and then he asks him to come back. But this chapter set was so good. I loved it. I thought it was great, and there was a lot to talk about in here, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. Please no spoilers, but I am going to wait for the comments for this week, and then I'm definitely going to dive in. We're over halfway done, so I'm going to dive into the next chapter set, which is going to be 3 chapters, chapters 20, 21, and 22, which I think we're getting close to the Congress Alliance, the Congress little event. I think we're getting close to where we're catching up with the Donghua, but we'll see next week. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with more of Scum Villain's self-saving system.